You got the call, the email, the message that said it was finally done. You got the job. You passed the exam. You hit the number. You finally reached the thing you had been chasing for months, maybe years. And then something strange happened. You just stood there, waiting for the feeling to arrive. Relief, joy, something big. But nothing really came. Not sadness, not disappointment, just a strange quiet. Almost like your brain didn't get the memo that this was supposed to be the happiest moment of your life. So you smiled anyway. You told people the good news. You said all the right things. But inside there was this quiet thought you couldn't quite explain. Why does this feel so flat? Why does success sometimes feel empty? That moment actually has a name. Psychologists call it the arrival fallacy, and it happens to far more people than anyone talks about, because it is a strange thing to admit. How do you explain that you finally got everything you wanted and it still didn't feel like enough? To understand that moment, we have to go back to the part no one sees, the years before it happened. Think about what it really took to get there. The nights you stayed up later than you should have. The things you quietly sacrificed. The weekends you worked when other people were resting. The conversations you had with yourself when things felt uncertain. The small voice that kept saying, "Keep going, just a little longer, because when I get there, it will finally feel worth it." Most big goals are not just goals. They are emotional promises. When I get the promotion, I will finally feel secure. When I reach this milestone, I will finally feel proud of myself. When I achieve this thing, I will finally feel like enough. We attach an enormous emotional weight to the finish line. The goal becomes the light at the end of the tunnel, and that light keeps us moving. But something strange happens when we reach it, because the moment we arrive, the brain changes the rules. Most people believe dopamine is the happiness chemical, the thing your brain releases when something good happens. But that is not actually what dopamine does. Dopamine is the wanting chemical. It does not reward you for having something. It rewards you for chasing it. Your brain releases dopamine during pursuit. When you're working toward something, when you're trying, improving, struggling, getting closer. Every late night, studying, every interview, every rejection that made you try again. All of that effort kept your brain in pursuit mode. And pursuit mode is emotionally powerful because your brain is wired to chase. But here is the strange part. The moment you reach the goal, the chase ends. The gap disappears and dopamine drops. Not because you failed, because you succeeded. Your brain was built to reward movement, not arrival. That is why the journey often feels more exciting than the destination. But there is another system working at the same time, something psychologists call hedonic adaptation. It sounds complicated, but the idea is simple. Your brain constantly resets what feels normal. When something really good happens, your mood goes up, but after a while, your brain adjusts. The promotion becomes your regular job. The new house becomes just your house. The relationship milestone becomes everyday life. Your brain updates the definition of normal. And once something becomes normal, it stops feeling extraordinary, not because it isn't valuable, but because your brain has adapted to it. This process kept humans alive for thousands of years. If we stayed satisfied forever, after every success, we would stop moving, stop improving, stop surviving. So the brain resets. It returns the emotional dial back toward the middle, which means something important. When you finally reach a major goal, two things happen at the same time. The dopamine from chasing it disappears, and the achievement quickly becomes your new normal. That combination can create a strange emotional silence. The moment you expected the biggest reward turns out to be the moment your brain resets, and that silence can feel like emptiness. But here is the part almost nobody talks about. That emptiness is not necessarily a problem. Sometimes it is simply the brain preparing for what comes next. Think about what your life looked like before you achieved the goal. Every day had direction. You knew what you were working toward. Your energy had somewhere to go. Then suddenly, the mission ended, and your brain had to figure out what to do with all that focus. That quiet moment after success can feel uncomfortable because the structure that guided your effort is suddenly gone. And the louder the pursuit was, the louder the silence feels when it ends. The people who experience this most strongly are often the people who cared the most. They invested years of effort, identity, sacrifice. So when the goal is achieved, it doesn't just give them a reward. It also removes the direction that shaped their life. And that shift can feel disorienting. But it does not mean the goal was meaningless. It means the meaning was not only in the result, it was also in the movement. This is the deeper idea behind the arrival fallacy, the belief that reaching a certain point will create lasting happiness. But happiness rarely lives in destinations. It lives in engagement, in effort, in growth, in becoming. When psychologists study long-term satisfaction, they find something interesting. The people who report the most consistent happiness are not the people who achieved the most. They are the people who stayed engaged with something meaningful, something they cared about doing, something that gave their days direction. Because the brain rewards pursuit, it rewards movement, it rewards curiosity. The feeling we often expect from success actually comes from progress. So when someone achieves a major goal and feels empty afterward, it does not mean the achievement was pointless. It means the brain has already adjusted, and now it is quietly asking a new question. What comes next? Not as a pressure, not as another finish line, but as a direction. Because the most stable sense of meaning does not come from arrival. It comes from engagement, from the feeling that you're still moving, still learning, still building something that matters to you. So if you ever reach a moment where success feels strangely quiet, it might help to remember this. Your brain is not punishing you. It is resetting. The mission you gave it has ended, and now it is ready for a new one. The quiet after. Winning is not the absence of success. It is often the proof of it. Your brain completed the task, and for a moment, your nervous system is simply catching its breath before it begins looking forward again. The silence you felt was not failure. It was your brain closing one chapter and quietly preparing for the next direction. If this explained a feeling you have never been able to put into words before. then you are exactly the kind of person this channel is for, because understanding the mind does not make life perfect, but it makes moments like this far less confusing. And sometimes that clarity is exactly what people need to keep moving forward.